Awesome. Howdy guys, how are we all? Hope you're all doing well. I'll just wait a few minutes. I'm aware everyone's working from home. Internets might be a bit dodgy, so I'll just wait for everyone to click on that link and get in while I get set up. So yeah, get yourselves comfortable. We'll get into it very soon. Okay, awesome. I'll get into it now. So hi guys, my name is Liv. I'm Neighbourhood's Digital Marketing Coordinator, and today we'll be running through how you can create buyer personas from scratch to drive sales for your business. So kudos to you. You're obviously very much on board with buyer personas and you want to get them started for your business to ensure that your marketing strategy is bopping. Just a bit of admin before we get started. I'll just let you know that if you have any questions throughout, we do have an hour session here today, so heaps of time to run through everything. But if you do have any questions, just head over to the right-hand side of the webinar screen. And I've enlisted the help of trusty Trav again today because he did so well with my last webinar, and he'll be able to answer any and all of your questions. So if you have any questions related to buyer personas, neighborhood, or the meaning of life, just chuck in there and ask him any questions you like. You won't be distracting me. As well as that, at the very end, there'll be about 10 minutes remaining for you to ask any other questions if you wanted to wait to the end. If you're worried that you'll miss anything if you ask a question, don't be. This webinar is fully recorded and we'll send you the recording at the end for you to basically follow along when you do this yourself at your business when this is all over. So awesome, when everyone's ready, I'll kick into it. Fab. Well, I'm going to get started. So we'll start off with the obvious. So you may have already got a buyer persona, you may have worked with them before, you may already have them and just want to know how you can use them more effectively in your marketing campaigns. You might be finding that no matter how great your campaign is, sometimes you might just not hear back. You might feel like no one's buying from you and that your budget is going to waste, which is rubbish, let's be fair. So this is where the buyer persona comes in. The buyer persona leads you to real potential clients. It can guide your product development. It determines where to focus your time. It ensures that you keep your messaging consistent and ensures that everyone in your business is on the same page. You can see down the bottom, I'm clearly very keen for Friday drinks because buyer personas are like gin to tonic. They're essential to your marketing strategy. So, a lot of people ask whether or not it's worth it. I mean, we've got an hour session today. Should we even be looking at this? And the short answer is yes, obviously. The effect that really good buyer personas have on your bottom line can't be understated. They sit at the very core of the whole inbound methodology, and they have to define every bit of content or messaging that comes after them. So while it can be a bit laborious and the workshops and everything involved can seem a bit tough, once you have them down pat, we like to think of them as a bit of a guiding light for the rest of your marketing efforts and 100% worth putting the work in. So what are we going to run through today? We've got 10 steps to buyer persona glory, basically just 10 phases we're going to run through so we know everything that's coming up, and I'm not going to spring anything on you. So we'll start with, of course, what a buyer persona is if you haven't already got one. We'll look at how we create buyer personas for our clients, obviously how you can do this yourself. We'll then go through each of the phases that we go through in our workshops. So we'll look at the research phase, the report generation, the workshop, documentation, and refresh stages. I'll then go through 10 ways that you can use buyer personas based on how we at Neighbourhood use ours. And I'll also look at some buyer persona mistakes that you should avoid to ensure that you're fine-tuning them so that the best they can be, basically. So, little shameless plug here, a bit of an about me. So I started at Neighbourhood as their digital marketing intern. And basically I was just their resident blogger. So I would spend my days at Neighbourhood, I was there 2 days a week. I would learn an inbound topic, be it about buyer personas, about SEO, for example, and then I would write a blog on that topic. And it was super, super important for me at that time to have a really good understanding of our buyer personas, so I knew how to come across in our messaging, in our language. And it's even more important now, as Neighbourhood's digital marketing coordinator, yay, I need to, in my everyday working life, I need to be subconsciously tapping into that buyer persona to know how I'm coming across in our branding, in our messaging, everything like that. So yeah, that's why you can trust me. But yeah, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into it. So let's start with what the hell a buyer persona actually is. So I like to think of a buyer persona as basically the value you get from it comes from efficiency and productivity. So the actual point of constructing your buyer persona is to figure out best practices for your marketing and sales teams to ensure that they focus their time on fostering the right kind of leads in the right way. So what I mean by the right kind of leads in this sense is people who are guaranteed to buy from you, people you enjoy working with. In essence, buyer personas will save you time and money because they eliminate the costs involved in servicing poor non-starter leads. So they also provide a means to qualify leads through market profiling and targeted sales practices. As well as this, they obviously also provide a better ROI on the time and resources spent nurturing and growing these leads. So to cut a long story short, they're basically what I like to think of as the ultimate productivity hack. So what does a buyer persona actually look like? Let's go into the sort of Google definition. So buyer personas are basically a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer who reflects the needs and concerns and pain points of one of your groups of possible customers. So they basically allow you to focus all of your selling efforts on each segment of your audience independently to maximize the relevance for each of them. So you can see here's an example of one of our buyer personas. This is a positive persona. So Marketing Mary is someone we love to work with. So you can see we've got some demographic information in her personal details, some real life quotes that she might say, her motivation scale, so a bit more about her emotions and her personality, her goals and challenges and objectives, the way she would describe our product, and her social media usage. Obviously, this is just one of about 5 that we have. You can have as many as you like, really, keep it quite minimal, but it all just depends on the diversity of your business, the number of products you sell, and obviously the diversity of your customer base. You know, everyone's different, everyone has different needs and wants. So as well as a positive persona, you've also got negative personas. Negative personas allow you to better understand and identify anyone that's not a good fit for your product or service. So like a positive persona outlines who you want to be working with, a negative persona does the opposite. So a negative buyer persona represents, my favorite definition of it, is a collection of behaviors, demographics, and real-life scenarios that disqualify leads from your pool of happy paying customers. So some characteristics of negative personas that you can look out for are red flags that your most problematic customers show in the sales process, prospects that made it far in the sales process but never closed, behaviors that cause the team to spend more time and money than originally planned, and customers that weren't profitable for the company for one reason or another. Also, goals that your team were not able to reach given the service offerings alone. So you can see over on the left, here's an example of a negative persona that we have. We call this person the enthusiastic entrepreneur. Why they may be a great person, they might be a right good laugh. This particular persona just doesn't fit in well with our services. To keep it really brief, basically they don't have a lot to spend, but they expect a lot of outcome, basically, and that just doesn't fit with what we do here at Neighbourhood. So to make buyer personas for our clients, this is actually a service that we offer. We do this through 4 steps in our buyer persona workshops. So you can see on the left, this is our process timeline. So we start with an info booklet, we give that out to a company, we send out some questionnaires, we generate a report based on those questionnaires. We then send out an agenda and facilitate a workshop where we create some buyer personas and then refresh those personas and provide feedback on how well they're performing. So there are 4 steps. basically, in the buyer persona creation process. We start with research. So we analyze the current customers of a company, ask their staff all the questions about the customers to build out some positive personas. Then we review old leads and past customers that they may not have been that fond of to better form the fabric of a negative persona. Then once we've got all that information, we generate a report from the information and distribute it to the staff and the client company. We then facilitate a 3-hour workshop where we split everyone off into groups, into teams of about 3 people. We have a small group discussion, and then we all come together and discuss our findings. In that, we create some buyer personas, so then we document them. So we design and present the buyer personas in a digestible format that we distribute across the entire organization to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We then offer other workshops to ensure that all the staff know what they can actually do with these buyer personas. And we ensure that we also include a refresh stage. So it's important, really important to recognize that doing a buyer persona like this isn't just a one-time thing. You can't just make it and be like, yep, done for life. Like, that's just not how it works. So you have to update these buyer personas based on people's changing needs. And there's especially no better time to do that than right now. With this whole COVID pandemic thing that's happening, people's needs are seriously changing. So this is very convenient. What a great time to be doing this. But obviously that's a service that we offer. And I know that everyone, of course, at the moment, you know, we're all in pretty rubbish situations. We don't just have money that we can be spending flippantly on these sort of workshops. So today, I'm obviously going to be showing you how you can do this all yourself. So I'm going to show you each of the 4 phases, and I'll show you why each step is super necessary. And basically, you'll have this recording so that when you go back to, you'll know, you'll have all these stages, and you can just follow along with me and do it yourself, really, which is super exciting. And you don't need the help of an agency. So let's get cracking. The first stage is research, and we analyze your positive personas. So we can start doing this by analyzing your current customers. This is a super obvious place to start, I think, because they've already responded to your product or service. So you know that it's working for them. So you can have a look at what do you like about them? What makes them good to work with? What are their characteristics? You can then back this up with first-person research from your staff by sending them a questionnaire with all of the questions you want to use to fill out your buyer persona. So we've got this questionnaire that we use on the right, which you can borrow or steal. Obviously, your staff are a really good place to start because they are on the front line with your customers every day. So they'll have some really good insights that you might not have thought of, and they'll really know what's going on. So next up, we have to look at your negative personas. So you're doing the same thing. You're using this same questionnaire, sending it out to your staff, but from the point of view of someone who they wouldn't want to be working with. So you have to think about it in terms of what sort of customers do you find waste your time, what sort of leads never convert, and have a look at how their challenges and goals differ from those of your best customers. That's the really important takeaway from separating those in your head. So it's very easy said than done, obviously. So I'm just going to show you some example of some data collection techniques. So if you're feeling ballsy, you can do some interviews. I find that this would be easier with current customers who you know are enjoying your service, so it's not awkward. But you can do them in person, over the phone, or on the internet. I think that would probably be my favorite way. You just got to ensure that your questions are really focused and clear and encourage open-ended responses because the answers that you'll get will be qualitative. My personal favorite way to get the answers are through questionnaires and surveys. You can also analyze the responses in a quantitative method to make it easier to collect that data. Obviously, you know, you can just be a human at the end of the day and just observe. You can study the dynamics of the situation, the frequency counts of target behaviors you found, and gauge it that way, just using your eyes really and writing stuff down. A really fun way that I think is really beneficial is focus groups. So you can facilitate a group interview with individuals that have something in common. It works really well because it gathers information about combined perspectives and opinions. So it's a basically just a bunch of like-minded people bouncing off each other. And I find it's the best way to get really like juicy information from people who know their stuff. Of course, you could also just sieve through your documents and reports. So examine existing data in the form of meeting minutes, reports, attendance logs. This sort of stuff will come in handy when you're looking at maybe the engagement of past customers. You know, how often were they with us? Were they engaged? That sort of thing. So you can really get some, you can really gauge from even numbers, that sort of qualitative data as well. So obviously I've given you a bunch of options there, but some people just want me to tell them what to do. So my personal favorite way I think you should do this, especially in regards to establishing a positive persona to start, would be to send your current customers an email with a buyer persona survey. Obviously don't position it as, hey, answer this buyer persona survey. You want to position it as a way for you to learn more about them so you can more effectively serve them and their needs. And they'll appreciate that and they'll want to fill it out, basically. So you can see an example buyer persona survey I've put on the side, the sort of questions that you can ask. You can obviously be as creative as you like, but ensure that you keep the survey to about 20 questions or less. You want to make sure, you know, you keep their attention alive and your response rate is high enough. Also, don't ask any awkward questions or be too sneaky about it. Just make it really easy for them to answer the questions. Don't ask for their name or any irrelevant content. Like, don't ask for their favorite color or anything like that. Just keep it really relevant to the stuff that you need to find out. So once you've got all this information, you can collate it all into a report. And this report is what you and your staff will be armed with when you go into that workshop. So ensure that your report analyzes the information provided by your staff members and compares it really obviously to the information provided by your customers. And you'll notice the gaps in the answers there and areas for you to notice and work on during that workshop. So now we come to the workshop time. So especially when I started at Neighbourhood, and a lot of people have mentioned, God, a buyer persona workshop sounds like a bit of a faff. Like, it's a long time, there's a lot to do just to get this fictional person on a bit of paper. And I do understand that, but I do now, understanding it, I completely disagree. The main benefits of using a workshop or a series of workshops at the very core of building your buyer persona is that it creates three things. It creates alignment, ownership, and momentum. So alignment comes from the fact that amongst every sector, alignment is built, across every sector about who the key personas are, because every persona is there. And by involving everyone in the development, you automatically create a sense of ownership amongst the group for what they've helped to create. So you want to make them feel like they're wanted, the people who are helping you, and that will really create that sense of ownership. And obviously, a really well-run workshop also provides a sense of energy and momentum around the whole initiative, and that's what you want. You don't want it to appear like a chore. So what should your buyer persona workshop look like? This is a good question because it can be quite hard to envisage. So in terms of who should be involved, you need to include as many senior managers as possible to ensure that the outcomes of your workshop are actionably adopted by the business. So it's all well and good just having it there and flailing it around, but how are you actually going to implement it? You need, the big cheeses of your company to be implementing that for you. You also should include a cross-section of your staff who have filled out your questionnaire and have a pretty good understanding and knowledge of the whole spectrum of your customers and are able to describe their attitudes, needs, characteristics, who know them pretty well. We recommend that your workshop is run by an independent or third-party facilitator, just to moderate the discussion and keep things moving and ensure that the energy remains focused. As part of our workshops, that's really what we're for. Obviously, we're not inputting much because we don't really know much about your customers and we don't want to sway you, but being that pillar there who's making sure that everything is running as it should is super important for a workshop like this. In terms of how long it should run for, in an ideal world, you would want a full day, which seems huge, but It allows you to have preparation and pre-work and breaks, as well as post-workshop refinement of those buyer personas to make sure you've got, everything sorted. Neighbourhoods buyer personas, however, run for about 3 hours, and we find that this is long enough to keep attention really focused and ensure that the conversation is moving and we're not veering off track, however easy that may be. So as well as this, in your workshop, you need to have a plan. All hell can break loose if you just gather everyone together and it's all just, everyone's there, it gets manic. So you need to ensure that you're following some guidelines. So you need to start by immersing your team in what you know about your customers from the report you generated. Your team would have filled out the questionnaire, so they'll already have a pretty good idea. So be sure to keep it pretty short. You then want to lay out the objectives of the day. So what do you want to be leaving here with? What do you want everyone to know that they have to have accomplished by the end of your workshop? And then get people warmed up to collaborate by splitting everyone into syndicates of about 3 to 5 people. You then want to tell each group to brainstorm about 4 to 8 different buyer archetypes that represent the spread of key buyers based on their experience and their understanding of your target market. You want to make sure that they capture these different groups to make sure that they all have completely different needs. So they're all very distinctive, and ensure that they capture these completely different archetypes on Post-it notes. We can then post all of these notes on a wall. And then through moderated discussion and analysis, we can cluster these notes into descriptions or into groups with similarities. Then we can pick out the main clusters and ask the groups to build the archetype as a buyer persona based on a format that you provide for them. So you can follow our format, as you can see here. So this is Gary, the general manager. This is one of our positive personas. We love working with Garys. And you can see it will make it a lot easier if you're following something like this when you're filling out this sort of format. Oh, what happened there? So another thing I would strongly recommend that you do in these workshops is to try empathy mapping. Empathy mapping is something I discovered at uni. I did a class called Innovating Products and Services. So it was a big innovation class, and we had to create a service for elderly people who were experiencing social isolation. And I found the topic really interesting, and in a tutorial that we did an empathy mapping workshop. And I left the tutorial fully so upset. I thought, oh my goodness, I feel awful. I really got inside the head of my, target persona, and I did really well on that assignment because I really felt like I really understood what they were wanting. So that's why I think you should do empathy mapping. Basically, it digs into the why and allows you to understand the thought processes of your consumer. In essence, empathy, obviously, is understanding the emotions, feelings, and thoughts of another person from their perspective. So I would strongly recommend that during your workshop, if you have time, you hand out a worksheet like the one I've shown you on the left, and get each syndicate to fill it out. So they can look at what would the user be thinking and feeling, what are some of their worries and aspirations, what would the user see while using our product, what might the user be saying when using our product, what are some of the user's pain points, what might the user gain in experience, all that sort of stuff. And that's really important as part of your persona. It's not just, as I say, what's their favorite color. You need to really understand them as a person. So once you've got all your stuff ready, you want to collate all of this information from the workshop into a main buyer persona, a negative persona, and your other personas. You want to ensure that you distribute this information company-wide to ensure continuity across all sectors, and basically just ensure that everyone's on the same page. This is super important. You can then organize further workshops if you see fit, for your staff, so they can better understand how they can utilize these new personas and how best to make the most from the information they stand to gain. Your buyer personas will be virtually useless if your staff don't know what they mean or don't know how to use them. So ensure that everyone knows what great effort you've put into making them and why they're so important. So as I said, you need to ensure that you refresh them. We would recommend you refresh them every 3 to 6 months because it's not a one-time fix. People change. Obviously, everyone's changing. The world is changing. So as is the nature of people and the world, your buyer personas must change to ensure that they remain agile and relevant in our changing landscape. As well as this, there are some added benefits. They also allow you to learn more about your customers over time, which is really neat. And they account for the fact that your business won't stay the same, and they allow you to communicate better with your team, which is a great added bonus. So we've come to the end of the workshop bit. I hope that all made sense. By this point, if you're following along, later along at your business, we can now look at how you can actually use this tangible buyer persona in all your marketing and how we at Neighbourhood use ours. So the first way, which is really handy for using your buyer personas, is to reallocate your ad spend. So after crafting some really good personas, you might have a really good understanding of where your customers are spending their time online. So you might find that you're looking at a business owner buyer persona, and they spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but at the moment you're doing Facebook ads. So you might pivot your ad strategy to go to LinkedIn ads. While LinkedIn is a bit more of an expensive ad medium, you'll find that your leads will be far more qualified than being on Facebook, where you're just getting sort of a steady stream of shit leads. You want to make sure that they're qualified. So I would strongly recommend that you do this. Next up, another way you can be there where they are is to reallocate your human resources. So if you know that the majority of your audience is on a particular social platform, for example, ensure that either you or someone on your team is regularly monitoring that channel and engaging with people who identify as one of your buyer personas. So it might sound a bit creepy, but all it is just hanging out where your buyer personas hang out. As well as this, you want to make sure that you're using language that makes sense to them. So once you know how the people in your different buyer personas communicate, you have to start speaking their language. So use the buzzwords they use the language they use, but don't force it. Ensure that it's not cringy. It should come completely naturally. To ensure that you're doing this, I would strongly recommend that you read books, read literature that your buyer persona reads. I know for ours, in particular, our buyer personas are from a different generation to me. So a lot of the references I make in my blogs, I'll write something that I think is hysterical, and I'll show one of my coworkers. They'll be like, how funny is this? But they'll look at me and be like, I have literally no idea what you're talking about. So make sure that even though your relevant references might be great to you, that they make sense to your buyer persona. A really actionable way you can do this, and maybe it's just because I have a really bad memory, I actually write down a lot of the things that I hear. I've got really funny coworkers, and they're very Australian, and also some from this buyer persona generation. So I actually write down a lot of the colloquialisms and funny things that they say, as you can see on the right. They think it's a bit weird and creepy, but I think it's just, an actionable way to show that I'm just trying to be better at my writing. That's all. So next up, you can write buyer persona specific blogs. So you can really show them what they want to see. I've got a little quote here. Buyer personas provide you a face to your target market. So they humanize who you're talking to. They help you understand your market's real needs and give you the inside scoop on what makes them tick. So in this case, you can target really niche long tail keywords, and eventually you might even decide to create persona specific sections of your channel for your blog. So a sort of example that I found a couple of weeks ago when the coronavirus first, took effect, I wrote a blog called The Coronavirus Effect, How Digital Marketers Must Respond. So that is a particular persona that I was targeting, digital marketers, and I made sure to focus it on helpful information. What do they want in that situation? They want useful, they want to be helped, they want to be reassured. So that was really why I chose that angle for that blog, as well as creating persona specific sections. On our website, we found that a lot of our personas, as well as a lot of people nowadays, are focusing a lot on video as a content streaming medium. As well as our buyer personas, we find that they're busy. You know, they don't have a lot of time to be reading through really long blogs. So we actually included a video article section on our site. So we've transferred all of our articles and we've recreated them into video form to account and accommodate for our buyer personas. So you can also write, as well as a blog, you can write a buyer persona specific ebook. So using the insights that you've gained about your buyer persona, you can create a targeted ebook that solves a common problem or answers a common question that your persona has. As well as this, if you can segment your contacts list based on buyer persona, that's a great way to easily share your ebook with that group of contacts who you know will be interested in it. And you can just flick it to them through an email and they'll be like, oh my God, how did you know I want to read about this? So that's really, really helpful. A good example of this, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but during my internship, I wrote an ebook called Content, the New Black, a bookmarkable guide to content marketing, which wasn't necessarily super buyer persona related, but it really, really helps. It took me so long, it took me a really long time, but it certainly saved you time down the track. I actually heard during my internship, Trav talked to one of our clients. I was sort of eavesdropping or learning. I was listening in and Trav, they were like, Trav, I don't understand why I need to be doing content. It seems like such a lot of effort and, you know, why should I be doing it? And Trav said, look, I want to focus on more actionable items right now. I want to be talking about valuable stuff, but I can send you an ebook that Liv, our intern, has written. It's like 20 pages long, thousands of words, all about content, and you can learn everything you need to know. And they were like, sweet. So the next meeting that they had, they were fully on board with content. They understood everything, and their meetings were kept very focused about actually doing valuable stuff for their business. So I think while it's a bit of a faff in the beginning, and it might be a bit annoying having to set time aside when you know you could be doing other stuff, it seriously helps qualify people down the line, and I cannot recommend it more. As well as this, you can audit your existing content for persona alignment. And I say you could, I mean you should. I think it's super important. So perform an audit of all of your content and try to figure out which persona each piece aligns with. So if you discover content that doesn't align with any of your personas, definitely consider updating it. Or if it's had absolutely no success generating leads whatsoever, 100% get rid of it because it's just sitting there stagnant and there's no point in it being there. I've attached an article there about how to conduct a content audit. Content audits can be quite fiddly, so it's just a really good example of how you can do that and why they're so important. So next up, another really good recommendation is to optimize your landing pages for buyer personas. So whenever you offer up a new piece of targeted content, be it through PPC or whatever, make sure that the accompanying landing page conveys to your persona in their language and how that content can help them solve a problem or add value in their lives. So a good example of this is from a webinar we did a couple months ago now. This was Trav's webinar, all about video marketing. And we really targeted this to one of our personas in particular who doesn't have a lot of, doesn't have really the money to spend when they know they could be doing it themselves. So we really focused this webinar around how you could do video marketing yourself. We did everything you need to know, all the equipment you need, so you don't have to spend money to get videographers in or an agency to do it for you. And we found that we got heaps of traction on this webinar. Because it really tapped in to their needs and we really understood what they would have wanted. So next up, a really fun HubSpotty thing you can be doing that you can do on really any platform is to use smart content. And this will tailor your website to different personas. So you don't have to have a one-size-fits-all website. With smart content, you can display completely different messaging to different people based on what persona you have them assigned to. So it's all about serving the right content at the right time to the right person. The potential of smart content really has two main benefits. It's twofold. For your website visitors, your site becomes a vast ecosystem of conversion opportunities because they don't have to see the same offer twice. As well as this, on the flip side for you, every landing page, form, CTA, or email has the potential to expose new content, new services, or new products to reconvert a visitor. This is super important. I've attached a HubSpot blog, which is really good about smart content and how you can implement it. It basically goes through the good, the bad, the ugly of smart content, and it's great. Can recommend. Next up, you can do some co-marketing with companies you know your personas really like. So whether it be a webinar, a co-written podcast, or simply a guest blog post on their website, collaborating with other businesses that you know your persona likes and respects can score you some serious brownie points. You can even partner with an influencer who you know your persona likes. A good example of this is Nike and Apple, or Uber and Spotify. Uber and Spotify particularly rang true for me. I feel like Uber finally got sick of me asking a million times, can I use the aux cord before a night out and playing my rubbish playlist? It makes sense, and they know what taps into their personas. They understand their consumers. I think that's great. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, businesses, like people, however unfair it may be, are often judged by those they hang around with. So always make sure you're in great company. Lastly, in terms of what you can be doing for buyer personas, you can segment out your negative personas. So you haven't gone to the effort, you haven't just wasted an hour on your Friday of me banging on to just, have them sitting there stagnant. So after you've created the time to create negative personas, you'll have the added advantage of being able to segment out the bad apples from your contact list. They're not just there to throw darts at you. Getting them out of your contact list can seriously help you with lead generation and lead to customer conversion rates. So when you think about it, if you take them out of your email list, your open rate will be a lot higher because, if they're not interested in your offering, they're not going to be opening your emails. So they're really just affecting all your data. So ensure you say bye-bye. So that's not all. We've come to the end of what you can be doing with your buyer personas, but I've got a few little tips that I found and things that I've uncovered by looking at other buyer personas and some mistakes you can avoid. Because at the end of the day, buyer personas are quite a widely accepted practice, but you need to course correct. Because far too many businesses, buyer personas are this attractive object of desire, basically, but they actually have little effect on the quality of their marketing efforts because they see it as a chore, basically. They think, oh my God, I have to do it. And they do it badly at the end of the day because they're confused about what buyer personas are and how to build them. So we're going to go through 5 mistakes that are pretty common so you know how to avoid them. So you'll come out of this the most, fine-tuned buyer personas ever. You'll be set. So the very first one, and we did focus on this pretty early on, is focusing on demographics rather than psychographics. Now, I know that sounds a bit la-di-da, but I'll explain. Basically, this means that you're focusing on the buyer and not the buyer's decision. So demographics, to give a pretty brief definition, are the concrete characteristics of a population. So their age, their gender, their ethnicity, their income. Whereas psychographics are more psychological, clues in the name, criteria. So attitudes, aspirations, and emotions. So demographics are really important for general targeting. Obviously, you want to know whether you're targeting males or females, that sort of thing. But psychographics provide marketers with so much more to make decisions from. They're like the meat and potatoes of marketing because they basically explain the way a person does things and why they do it. So this really comes down as well to your empathy mapping because people make decisions from emotions. So 100% I would strongly recommend that you empathy map. It will be great. So to do this as well, ask yourself when you're fleshing out your buyer personas, what problems have your customers been experiencing in their life? How does it make them feel? What are they hoping for? What will happen if they fail to find a solution? And how will they feel if they succeed? This is super important. The next mistake is to think about the trigger points. Your customers won't have just bought from you completely out of the blue. there must have been a trigger. So an event that made them want to start researching and eventually make a purchase decision to alleviate that pain. So for example, maybe during my isolation, I've got pretty bored. So I might go into my wardrobe and be like, oh, I don't have enough dresses. So that would have been the trigger point for me going online shopping and buying 5 more. So definitely consider including triggering events in your buyer personas to arm yourself with information to catch consumers at those critical points. So understanding what that, why they've come to you, really. So this is a really important one, and it's super important not to forget it. It's the buyer's journey. So not only does your content have to appeal to your ideal customer, it also has to appeal to them at the stage of the buyer's journey that they're in. So I'm not sure whether you've looked at the buyer's journey before. It's a pretty inbound methodology, but the buyer's journey is pictured here on the left. So it basically encompasses the awareness stage, so where a prospect is aware of a pain or problem, then through to the consideration stage, where they're considering solutions to alleviate that pain, and then through to the decision stage, so the make or break moment where they decide whether or not to purchase from you. So basically, you don't want to be, as example, you don't want to be showing prices to a customer who's just starting to research. Likewise, you don't want to go on and on about how they can address their problem when they want pricing. So as part of your buyer persona, you want to ensure you provide context and insight around your particular persona's journey to a decision. So how quickly are they making that decision? Are there lots of stages that they go through? You have to account for that. Fourth is, obviously I spoke about earlier how many buyer personas you should make. So you've got your positive persona, you've got your negative persona, that's 2 down, but I did mention other personas. And some people go mad and think they have to make a persona for every demographic that they sell to. They actually lay out their buyer personas onto existing market segments. And this isn't the way you want to go about it. If you take one thing away from this webinar, this is 100% it. This is the one line I want you to remember. It's not about how many buyer personas you need. It's about how many ways you need to market your solution to persuade buyers that your approach is suited to their needs. That's all it is. So you might only have 2 other personas. You might have 5 more if your business is super diverse and you have a really diverse customer base. That's a really important point I want you to take home. The final mistake I'll go through, and this is obviously very pivotal, you want to include action items for your marketing after creating your persona. It's all well and good to go through this process and basically waste heaps of time listening to me, waste time, making a workshop, and then have your buyer persona just sitting in a drawer collecting dust. That's far too easy. You need to make sure that as part of your persona, you include action items at the very end to make sure that you're, instating them straight away. Because when a customer puts 100% of effort into learning more about their ideal customer, analyzing their journey, and being really committed to solving their problems, the buyer persona can be a really, really powerful marketing tool if done correctly. So really make sure you include those action items, guys. And yeah, that's all for today, guys. We went through that pretty swiftly. I hope you got some value from it and got your questions answered. Obviously, we'll send you these slides afterwards. You'll have me talking over the top of them, so you can mute it, skip the cringy bits, and just get the juicy info that you want. Yeah, I hope you got some value from it. And if you want to reach out, send me any of the buyer personas you've created or need any help, 100% please email me. My email's just there. It's really easy to remember. And stay tuned. In 2 weeks, we'll be doing a webinar all about how to boost your conversions with effective landing pages. So that's going to be really exciting. I will just stay on. We've got 15 minutes left of this session, so I'll stay on for another 5 minutes with Trav, just in case any of you have any other questions. But for the rest of you, have a great Friday, and thank you so much for coming. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thanks, Mitch. Fab. Well, if anyone has any other questions, obviously feel free to email Trav or I. I think that might be it for Trav. Awesome. We'll send you this recording, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great Friday. Thank you.